The Cincinnati Bengals are without a doubt the most disappointing football team of this NFL season. And it's really not even that close. Leading up to 2024, we were all excited, Bengals fans and non-Bengals fans included, about the return of Joe Burrow, the return of Joe Shiesty and the Cincinnati Bengals. We were all anticipating another potential AFC championship or maybe even Super Bowl appearance. And for many, the Cincinnati Bengals 2024 season was going to be the best season of their franchise's history. I mean, why wouldn't it be? It's Burrow, motivated, coming off an injured season with Jamar Chase entering his peak. T. Higgins, motivated by a contract year. Finally having a decent offensive line up front. A defense that was rejuvenated by offseason signings. But none of that has happened. Well, actually, some of that has happened, which is exactly what makes the Bengals one of the most frustrating teams I've ever watched. This version of the Cincinnati Bengals, the 2024 version, is one of the most frustrating seasons, frustrating teams that I have seen. Why? Think about it. This team has lost not one, not two, not three, but as of week 14, 4 games where their offense produced 30-plus points. And that's just the beginning. This Bengals team, think about it, has the leading passer in the NFL, the leading receiver in the NFL, and the leading sacker in the NFL. Now sit back, close your eyes, and imagine if I said in August, what would the Bengals record be if I told you that Burrow would be playing the best football of his career? And not only that, but you could make an argument that he's the most valuable quarterback in the league, and he's leading the NFL in passing. Not only that, but on top of Joe Burrow being one of the best quarterbacks in the game, and he's healthy, and he's better than ever, Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the league. He's better than Tyreek Hill. He's better than Justin Jefferson. He's better than anybody. And on top of that, I told you that Chase Brown was an electric breakout running back that fantasy football players must draft. And on top of that, I told you that Trey Hendrickson was leading the NFL in sacks. Not TJ Watt, not Myles Garrett in your own division, Trey Hendrickson. Yeah. Now open your eyes and now think about that. What would the Bengals record be if I told you that before the season? 11 wins? 10 wins? I think a lot of people would say, including myself, that the Bengals would be on their way to the Super Bowl, on their way to the AFC Championship at minimum. Maybe they'd have the number 1 seed in the AFC, and I was very high on the Bengals this year, I must admit. I thought Burrow was going to be spectacular. He has been. I thought Jamar Chase was going to have the best season of his career. I've said this. He has. I thought the offensive line was going to be the best of Burrow's career. In some regard, it's been a little bit better. I don't know if you could necessarily say that, but you could maybe argue that. I was a huge fan of Chase Brown. Defensively, I did not see this catastrophic catastrophe happening. More on that in a little bit. But I thought the Bengals would be in the running for the AFC Championship. I actually predicted them to be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the AFC off the top of my head. And I thought they would win the AFC North. And if you were to tell me that they'd have the leading passer, leading receiver, and leading sacker, I'd be like, yes, I was totally right. I knocked it right out of the park. Well, Mitch, you're wrong. Because this team is so poorly coached, and it's a systemic issue with Cincinnati. They have so many issues from the top to the bottom. Let's break it down. So first of all, we know that this football team has been built on the identity of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and the passing game and T. Higgins. And I think because of that, Zay Taylor has entitled these players. And because of the identity that this team has garnered, they have become extremely soft. And I think the biggest problem with the Bengals is the fact that Zay Taylor should have a sponsorship from Charmin because he is Charmin soft. I mean, absolutely Charmin soft, okay? I don't know what it is. I'm not there on a daily basis investigating their practices. I wasn't at training camp. I don't know how much they're physical at practice, but I almost guarantee you, when you compare it to Mike Tomlin's Steelers, when you compare it to John Harbaugh's Baltimore Ravens, this team is not physical. They don't tackle well. They don't hit. They have no sort of grit to this football team. And it reflects in the way they talk about the games. It reflects the way they talk about themselves. This team is out of control, and it's all because of Zay Taylor. It's all because of Zay Taylor. I'm sorry, you can blame the ownership. You can say that the GM or whoever is making those decisions in Cincinnati, sometimes it's murky, is responsible for not putting the defense in place or not having the offensive line in order for Joe Burrow or not having this or that or having a proper replacement for DJ Reader or letting Jesse Bates go or not upgrading corner or whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, you give these same players to Bill Belichick, this team's winning 11 games already. I promise you that. I'm a Pats fan, as you can see, probably, I hope. And I also wanted Bill Belichick to move on from the Patriots, but this was in part because of the decisions made in the front office by Bill, and this was also in part because of the timing. I felt like it was just a good time to get rid of an older coach. But you look at what Bill Belichick could bring to the Bengals, and I think there's no other answer for Cincinnati entering this offseason than hiring Bill Belichick. Do I think Mike Vrabel is also a potential solution if Bill Belichick for some reason says no to Cincinnati? Then sure, Mike Vrabel might be my 1B or my second choice, right? But the top choice is no doubt Bill Belichick. And when you really think about it, Zay Taylor has entitled his players. This team thinks they're better than they are. This team cries to the media. Joe Burrow continuously, game after game after game, although none of it is really his fault, he continues to just have the same message to the team. The defense, no accountability. The defense, soft. The defense sucks. I mean, think about this defense, man. There's more talent here on paper than the performance. 31st in points against. 30th in first downs allowed. 4 games that they lost when their offense scored 30-plus points. Joe Burrow has a 67% completion rate. 302 completions, first in the league. 3,337 yards, first in the league. and 30 touchdowns, first in the league. And he only has 5 interceptions. Joe Burrow has been right there with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as the best quarterbacks in the league, and yet his team does not reflect his level of play the same way that Josh and Lamar do. In fact, Joe Burrow is one of the only quarterbacks to have this good of a touchdown to interception ratio at this point in NFL season and have a losing record. I think he might be the only one in NFL history. It's that bad defensively, and it's that bad from a coaching perspective. Zay Taylor has made numerous mistakes in overtime, the fourth quarter, the list goes on. Zay Taylor does not have this team prepared in the beginning of an NFL season ever. They lost to the New England Patriots with Jacoby Brissett, not even Drake May, Jacoby Brissett in their building in week 1. Talk about not prepared. They've blown multiple games to the Baltimore Ravens. They took bad penalties against the Chiefs. You could blame the refs if you want, but a bad timed penalty. They're not physical. They don't practice tackling. It's kind of obvious. So you think about what they could be, what they could evolve into by bringing in a coach like Bill Belichick. And I want to sell you Bengals fans on why they should hire Bill Belichick. The reason I believe they should hire Bill Belichick is because he's the antithesis of Zay Taylor. He's the opposite. While Zach is a younger, offensive-minded coach, Bill Belichick is an older, wiser winner who is a defensive coach. In my opinion, the greatest defensive coach in NFL history and probably football history for that matter. Secondly, Bill Belichick is a little old school. He's tough on his players. He doesn't allow his culture to get out of whack. He doesn't allow his personalities to get out of order. And he holds players accountable, most importantly. Zay Taylor, on the other hand, is soft with his players. It feels like he's friends with his players. It feels like he has no sort of order within his locker room, and he doesn't really have a handle on what happens outside of the locker room or within the media when it comes to the Bengals. And it's not like the Bengals play in New York. All right, this is not the biggest media circus you've seen. He's the antithesis, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick would bring toughness. Bill Belichick would bring a restored culture. And I think a restored, most importantly, sense of focus on what this team should become, which is a Super Bowl contending team and should be a winner. There's no doubt. Every year that Joe Burrow plays at this level, they should be at least in the AFC divisional round. And there's no excuse. At least. Right? And when you think about Bill Belichick as somebody that was critical of him at the end of his career, the biggest flaws with Belichick were, honestly, not finding a proper replacement for Tom Brady, which is extremely hard to do. So, quarterback. 2, drafting good skill talent. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. The Bengals have that handle. The Patriots did not. Even at the end of Brady's career, he had nothing, right? And that's pretty much it. I mean, when you think about his personnel decisions, sometimes he's a little cheap. Sometimes he perhaps went with the smarter culture fit over the talent in his drafts. Sometimes he reached for players that he liked more than others, and sometimes he was proven wrong. But let's just put it this way. If you give Bill Belichick, with his expertise defensively, his expertise in terms of how to run an operation, how to control a game through clock management, how to be the chess master during a game, which Zay Taylor is none of these things, okay? He's not a good culture builder, I would argue. I think at the very least, maybe he started to have a good culture and it fell off. And he's lost the locker room and he's lost his players. And I would argue that's a huge reason, if not the biggest reason, he should be let go this offseason. Right? I would actually argue that the reason the culture has worked out for Zay Taylor is because of Joe Burrow. That would be my argument. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. That being said, Belichick's one of the best culture builders of all time. The Patriot way is a thing because of Bill Belichick. Not Tom Brady, Bill Belichick. Brady's probably more responsible for the winning. That's kind of factual. But in terms of the culture, I think Bill Belichick put that in place. 2, his defensive prowess. If there's anybody that can fix the Bengals defense, it's Bill Belichick. And if you just gave Bill Belichick a top 5 quarterback, a top 5 receiver, and he could figure everything else out, and he has pieces across the roster in certain spots that I'm sure he could work with. You let Bill Belichick bring his own staff. Josh McDaniels at offensive coordinator, his guy, right? Josh can run a similar Brady-like offense for Joe Burrow. Burrow can have his own sort of influence over it. Belichick, I'm sure, would hire Matt Patricia, somebody else on defense, maybe his son, who knows. But you put together a staff that's experienced a lot of Super Bowls. Who knows? Brian Daboll could be available too. That's a former Patriot guy. And you could put together that staff. Belichick coached the Patriots in the cold weather. Belichick used to coach for Cleveland. So he already kind of knows that market. He knows that state. He knows that area probably relatively well. He has a lot of respect for Paul Brown. That's another thing. Just throwing little things out there that I think could provide some influence. But you put together Belichick with another B-named quarterback, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady. You give him a strong leader at that position, a strong processor at that position, an accurate player that would fit his style of NFL, his style of football. You add a little bit of physicality to the run game, which is something that I think probably his choice of offensive coordinator, Josh McDaniels, would bring, which I think is probably the most underrated area of McDaniels as an offensive coach, is the run game. You even look what he did with the Raiders and all his failures as a head coach. He allowed Josh Jacobs to become the leading rusher in the NFL. So he brings a physical run game, which brings physicality, which you need in the AFC North, which you need in cold weather, which is what the Bengals have not had. You couple that with Joe Burrow. You couple that with Jamar Chase. We'll see if T. Higgins, maybe they would move on from T. Higgins, spend some money on defense. You couple that with a defense that would be way more schematically diverse, way better coached, a culture that would be all about winning. It would be intense, but it would be all about winning. It would get their players in line, and it would kick their ass. It would boot them in the butt and get them going. And that's what the Bengals need. Because as an NFL person that covers every team, that covers the league, it legitimately pains me to watch this team play every week. And I'm not a Bengals fan, but I'm a fan of the NFL. I'm a fan of football. And I'm somebody that analyzes every team. And when I watch the Bengals, it's a team that's poorly constructed, that's poorly coached, that culture is a mess, that's soft. And there's no reason that this team, with as good of a quarterback as they have and as good of a receiver that they have, there's no chance that this team should not be a contender, especially in an NFL that is a complete disaster, an NFL that is underwhelming, an NFL that is not very competitive, an NFL that is not very good. You compare this NFL to 2010, 2014, 2006, it's not even close, especially in the AFC. You give Belichick an elite quarterback again. You let him build the roster, build the staff around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You already have two of his biggest flaws solved. You allow him to restructure this defense. I think they win a Super Bowl within 2 years. I really do. I really do. I think Belichick still has that left in him. One more run with a player like that. There's no way that this team should not be in the playoffs. At the very least, it's disgusting. It's catastrophic. It's the biggest disappointment of 2024, the Cincinnati Bengals. So Belichick to the Bengals has to happen. I beg of you, Cincinnati. I beg of you. It has to happen. I need it. Somebody's got to stop the Chiefs, bro. And if Josh Allen can't do it, why not get the coach that beat them in 2018 AFC Championship and the quarterback that beat them in the 2021 AFC Championship together? I'm just saying. Gronk spiked the like button, guys. Thank you for watching. Bengals fans, let me know your thoughts on this. The Bengals being disappointing. What's the problem with Cincinnati in your opinion? And would you hire Bill Belichick if you were running the team? Thanks for watching. Peace.